And welcome to another edition of DT Live. Hope everyone is doing all right this afternoon. So this is really the first live stream I've done probably in 3 months because of some weird internet problems I've been having here at my new office, this office building. When I moved in, the internet was a little flaky. But that first week I moved in, I did one of these Q&A live streams where I chatted with the YouTube chat and hung out with you guys for a couple of hours. And that live stream went okay. I don't remember us having any problems with that particular live stream 3 months ago. But shortly after that, things started getting progressively worse to the point where that month I did my live stream with my patrons. So I do a monthly patrons only chat where guys from my Patreon hang out with me. And typically I stream that patrons chat on YouTube so you guys can watch it. But it was a problem. It was an issue. That was June's patrons chat. And then July's patrons chat, I couldn't even stream it because the internet was so bad. We actually had to get one of the patrons to stream it from their YouTube channel, and I just joined in. Got my coffee here this afternoon. So I have had probably 6 different service calls out to this location trying to figure out what the problem with the internet was. 3 or 4 of those service calls were from actual Comcast, and then we've called 2 or 3 other technicians out to also take a look at the equipment here. So they have a little utility room here in this office, and they have a Comcast business modem. They have a Netgate APU, I think, in that room. They have a Cradle Point. Also have like a 24-port switch. You know, they've got a lot of equipment. And man, for the last month, especially, for the last 3 or 4 weeks when the internet was really starting to cause me problems to where I couldn't even do my work, I was in there trying to figure out which piece of equipment was the problem. All of the equipment seemed like it was working. I thought, well, maybe it's bad connections, bad cables. None of that worked. It didn't matter what I took out of the chain of equipment. The internet was bad, so I thought, man, it's got to be Comcast, right? It's got to be their service before it even gets here. And finally, what happened is I complained enough, and the owner of this building complained enough because he pays them a lot of money for really good internet. Actually, it's supposed to be really good internet, and he's got all this equipment, of course, from them. And, you know, we don't have good internet service here. So we got on them, and finally they came out. And I talked to a lady on the phone, I guess one of the higher ups at Comcast. She's the one, I guess, when people complain, especially when people are threatening to take their business somewhere else, she's the one that gets on the phone with you. And she was very nice, very friendly. She's gave me her personal number, and we're going to get this straight. We're going to get it straight today. I'm going to send you the good technician out. I'm not going to send you those horrible technicians that I sent the first 3 service calls that didn't know what they were doing. One of them, all he did, he changed the battery in the modem, as if the battery in the modem was causing the internet to go in and out, to constantly drop. I mean, if it was a dead battery, it would just be out all the time, right? Like, you know, these weren't rocket scientists that they were sending out to fix the problem. So finally she said, I'm going to send you the good technician. And boy, was he the good technician, because they knew what the problem was. As soon as he got here, he unplugged the coax to the modem, and he started changing the connector on it because it's like, well, it's probably this connector's bad. Probably the cable's bad. It eventually runs up into an attic where there was a switcher, or a splitter. He changed that splitter, and then he ran a whole new length of cable from the modem to the outside of the building, to the pole outside the building, to another pole across the street. You know, like they already knew that they needed to service this stuff, but I guess it's expensive to run some of this new cable, right? To replace some of this old cable that's probably been here for decades. And they just, you know, why does it take 4 different times for you to call Comcast for them to actually fix the problem? You know, changing a battery in the modem, you know, that's nothing. Anyway, it's just been a nightmare. The internet is now fixed, though. I mean, I can see now the speed is great. We're getting no dropped frames here in OBS. We got a green light in OBS. And as soon as he changed that wire, you know, as soon as he ran that new length of cable outside to the poles and everything, and I got online, I noticed a definite speed difference, because even when the internet was working, it wasn't noticeably slow, but man, it's lightning fast now. So I think I can actually get back to my normal routine, and because here lately, for the last probably 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, last 2 months, I haven't really taken a day off. I've been at this office every single day, at least for a few hours, because I never knew which day I would have internet, which day I wouldn't have internet. I always came here with a plan, especially the days where I really knew I needed to make some content. I would come with 2 plans. A plan of a video I would make that day if I had internet, and a plan for a video I'd make if I didn't have internet. And it was frustrating. It was getting to the point where I was seriously, I'd already talked to the owner of this building, and I told him that I either have to move out of here. He's got other buildings, other office buildings around town. I was like, we're going to have to find me a new spot, or I'm just going to have to break my lease and go find an office with somebody else, because this wasn't working. But thankfully, it looks like everything's fine now. Anyway, that was a very long rant about the internet situation, but I really I'm very happy that that's finally been straightened out. It's really taken a toll on me. And that's why we're doing the live stream today, because I wanted to test the internet. Also, this is easy content, right? Because honestly, I need to take some time off. When I'm done here today, I'm going to go home. I'm going to take a nap. I'll probably come back tomorrow, though. I'll just take the afternoon off. Got my cup of joe, and this is literally a cup of joe. For those of you that are not aware of Joe's brand coffee, good stuff. DT, is this just a talk? What is the stream about? I have no idea what the stream is about. Mainly, this was just a stream to interact with you guys. You guys want to ask any questions, comments. I will, of course, respond to anything you guys want to talk about. Anything about Linux. Anything about life. Right? Just whatever. I'm mainly just happy that I can finally do one of these streams. I owed it to you guys as soon as I knew that the internet was back up to finally do one of these streams here. Hold on just a second. Let's go ahead and remove the troll. Network Chuck Coffee. I don't know. I've never heard of Network Chuck Coffee. I may have to check that one out. I do love me some coffee. I like good coffee. But yeah, I was saying, I owed it to you guys now that I knew we finally had a real internet connection that wasn't going to drop out, to finally do one of these streams, because I've been saying forever, for months now, I needed to do one of these streams. And seriously, the last time I did a live stream, I think was the last week of May or the first week of June, not counting the patrons chats that I do, but doing one of these kinds of Q&A chats with you guys. I haven't done one in forever. So, let's see. DT, thoughts about the Steam Deck? I think the Steam Deck is going to be a success. I think Valve is a company that learns from its mistakes, and they typically do things right. I think they learned from the Steam Machine. The Steam Machine wasn't a success for them, but that was early days of gaming on Linux, and now it's much, much better. Also, because of their failures with the Steam Machine, I think they're going to do the Steam Deck right. As far as Linux gaming future, we can game now on Linux. If you want to move to Linux and you're worried about being able to game, I think that's no longer a concern. Somebody was asking about speed, up speed, down speed. They had told me what the speed was, but you know what? We could just run a speed test. Hold on just a second, guys. We'll do a speed test. And I will tell you what my speed... Well... Give me just a second here. That's testing the download speed. And we're getting 300 megabits per second. And the up speed looks like it's going to be around 38 or 40 up. So And they're actually going to increase the speed. Instead of the 300 megabits, I think they're going to increase it to 1,000. And I think they were going to do that for free. I think that's a free upgrade they were going to offer us. I guess because we complained. So actually, the internet speed right now is good. It's going to get even better once they get the higher speed here. So it's plenty fast enough for the occasional live stream. And really, that's about all I need. Really, most of the time, what I needed internet for is just to be able to browse the web, right? Just to be able to check my email, things like that, check my GitLab. DT started using Arco for work and now enjoy the experience. I may have accidentally uninstalled DWM and LightDM yesterday. Yeah, that happens, but you can always reinstall. DT, why are you bald and when did you begin going bald? Let me find the band button and this will take care of that problem. Renard, DT, were you serious when you said that you should stop recommending stable distros of Linux? Yeah, I think for many people. Now, obviously, for people that are not going to do anything with their computer, the kind of person that never updates their machine, like your elderly grandparent or something, that's probably not a great idea. But for most people, most young people, middle-aged people, the people that, actually know how to use a computer and will interact with their computer on a regular basis, I think it makes sense these days. For desktop Linux, not servers, right? Although I know a lot of people do run things like Arch and Gentoo on servers, I personally wouldn't do that. For me, when I'm setting up a server, it's typically probably the same for most people when they set up a server, is you install it and you never plan on checking back into that thing. You never plan on updating it. You plan on putting Debian stable or Ubuntu LTS server on a machine and you leave it running for 2 years, 4 years, 10 years, right? Maybe without ever checking on it, without updating it. So you wouldn't want to do a rolling release on a server typically, because if you ever did have to do an update, it would be such a massive update, it's almost guaranteed to break a server. Hey DT, when I tried Arch or Arch-based, my system failed to boot with UUID, failed to mount root. Yeah, I can't help you with that. But there's really good support with Arch Linux as far as the Arch forums. There's also an Arch Linux subreddit. Of course, if you were using an Arch-based system, if you were using Manjaro, Manjaro has a very big and active community. Then they have forums. I think they have a subreddit as well. Of course, you can also find just general Linux support subreddits. There's Linux for Noobs. There's also Linux Questions, r/Linux Questions, r/Linux for Noobs. Those are very large subreddits where you can ask support type Linux questions and usually get a pretty quick answer. Let's see, DT, have you ever reached out to Eric Dubois about something related to Arco? I have not. I have messaged him a couple of times on Patreon. I'm actually a patron of the Arco Linux team. And, like if I had or discovered a problem in Arco, I think I've messaged him once or twice. But as far as reaching out to Eric Dubois personally for any kind of support-related questions, no, typically. I'm one of those people. I'm my own support channel. Something, is going on with my machine. I'm going to figure out what the problem is and fix it myself. Let's see, the best distro for beginners, Manjaro. Manjaro is good. The one thing I like about Manjaro, other than obviously being a rolling release, obviously they're going to have up-to-date packages, but their desktop environment editions, and the main editions, the KDE edition, and the XFCE edition, and the GNOME edition. So they have 3 main flavors, and all of those look pretty good. The KDE Plasma version of Manjaro looks sharp. It really does. It's a very nice looking KDE Plasma. I'm not a Plasma fan. Their XFCE edition might be the best XFCE distribution out there. That's debatable. Of course, there's 100 XFCE distros out there, but Manjaro does those particular desktop environments really nicely. Hey DT, what keyboard are you using? I am still using my Moonlander here at the office, and I use my ErgoDox at home. I don't have a computer at home, but I have my ErgoDox plugged into a Raspberry Pi 4 at the moment. Just playing around with the idea, could a Raspberry Pi 4 actually work as a home computer? I'll go ahead and do a spoiler. I may do a video about this at some point, but no, the Raspberry Pi 4 is not a good desktop replacement. Don't go buy a $30 Raspberry Pi and think it's going to be an actual computer. I can do some things with it. I can connect to the internet, obviously. It's got an Ethernet port. It's got it even has Bluetooth capabilities, the Pi 4. So I can get sound through a Bluetooth speaker. But the problem is what most people think of doing on a computer, browsing the web. That's not great because these big, heavy, bloated web browsers, Chrome, Firefox, all these modern web browsers, they suck up too many resources for a Raspberry Pi for that to be a pleasant experience. Also, watching video, streaming video, watching Netflix or YouTube in high definition or anything like that, that's not going to work on a Pi. It's just not. Gaming, of course, would be completely out of the question. But I was able to get Manjaro ARM installed on that Pi 4, and, I can open up Emacs and do some stuff inside Emacs just fine. It's just, some of the other stuff most people want to do with a computer you can't really do on a Pi 4. Hey DT, do you have a favorite desktop environment that's not a window manager? Well, every desktop environment has a window manager. So, but if you favorite desktop environment, I don't know. Like if I was going to install one and use it as is, LXQt probably, just because there's not much to it. It's almost like a standalone window manager. OpenBox, I love the OpenBox window manager. That's typically the window manager installed with LXQt, so. DT, when are we getting the next Freestyle rap video? People have been asking for another one for years now since I did that first one in the early days of the channel. Maybe one day. I've thought about it. It's been a while since we've done any kind of musical stuff on the channel, actually. I haven't, played the trombone or the recorder or anything for you guys. It might be something we do maybe toward the end of the year. Typically, I start playing the trombone again, get back into shape a little bit, just so I can do some Christmas carols and things like that. I haven't really picked up the recorder in a while either. I wouldn't mind actually picking that up and maybe studying, some kind of serious, recorder sonata or something and playing something like I did the last time that Handel sonata that I played for you guys. Let's see. Hey DT, you're not a fan of WYSIWYG. What do you prefer to typeset in? So what I've been doing these days, really since switching to Emacs, because Emacs can export to so many different formats, org mode. You just write everything in org mode, and then you can export it to whatever you want to export it to. It exports to Markdown and LaTeX, PDF, HTML. It even has the ability to export to the Gemini format for you making your own Gemini capsules. So these days, just because I'm using org mode, it just makes sense to use that for everything. Mitchell Valentino. Appreciate the super chat. More trombone, please. Yeah, I need to get back into shape. I was actually talking to one of my nieces the other day. She plays the trombone in high school. And sometimes I give her lessons and we play. And I was telling her we needed to play a little bit more so she gets back in shape as the kids are going back to school here in the next week or two. And of course, I need to get back in shape. So you did window manager hopping already. When are you doing Linux distro hopping? Well, I've hopped plenty of times distros. So yeah, I've run a lot of Linux distros. Like Ubuntu and Debian and things like that specifically was his question. I was running Ubuntu when I started the channel. I was running Ubuntu LTS 1804? No. When did I start the channel? Late 2017, I think. So 1804 wasn't out. That was 1604 I was still running. And Debian, I've mentioned, I use Debian all the time. Debian stable. Used that in years past. Debian stable is still kind of like my go-to server distro. Anytime I want to spin up a server, it's typically Debian. On my main production machine, I've actually made videos, like installed these Linux distros and made videos while using these distros. I've run Ubuntu, I've run Arch Linux, of course, Manjaro, Arco, Calculate. I want to say I made some videos. I think I ran Antics for 2 or 3 weeks one time on my main production machine, made videos in it. Fedora. Fedora was actually a very nice experience as far as it had all the software and everything I need to do this kind of audio video stuff. Fedora was really nice. The few weeks I spent with that. Many times, though, I was running these distributions on my main production machine and didn't tell you guys. A lot of times I would just hop just to see how it worked for me. And sometimes I, would hop rather quickly, just check out something for a few weeks and then move on to something else rather quickly. So, but then I got tired of that because there was points there where, I'd run, I don't know, half a dozen different Linux distributions on this machine over the course of 2 months. Now that's too much hopping in such a short amount of time. So then it got to the point where when I switched to Manjaro at one point, I remember I ran Manjaro for probably a solid year. Maybe, I might have made it an entire year on Manjaro. I can't remember. When I installed Arco, though, I've had the same instance of Arco. No, I did try to hop in between. But I've probably run Arco now for about 1.5 years on this machine, with a small little break in between where I did try to hop to some other stuff, but then went back to Arco. And that's the main production machine. On my test machines, my laptops, I've run all kinds of stuff, right? I mean, I've got a laptop back there that's running NixOS. Got one at home that's running Solus. And on these laptops, I've also lived or had installed for longer periods of time, a few weeks, a few months. I know I've had Deepin running for a while on one of them, and I like that okay enough. Linux Lite has been on these machines a lot. Let's see. ADT, what do you think of the Arch installer? I only tried it one time, and it didn't work for me. Like, you couldn't even, there was Python errors or something. It didn't even, I couldn't get it to do anything. But that was when it was kind of new. I haven't gone back and tried it again. So if you're talking about like their guided installation or whatever, I've heard about it, and the one time I tried it, it just didn't work. So, but I'm sure I'll eventually get it to work for me. When one day I'll probably check it out and do something on video with it. Maybe give them time to sort out some of the problems. I don't like showing alpha or beta quality software, because it's going to be a negative video. Nobody likes that. So, see, Robin says, DT, are you joking about Fish as the default shell or not? I'm actually using Fish as my default user shell right now. Now, Fish as a default system shell, I would like to do something like that. It would require a little work because there's going to be probably some scripts on the system that are, POSIX compliant scripts that Fish wouldn't be able to read. So you would have to rewrite some of that stuff in Fish in order to make Fish a default shell, like the system shell. But I think it's worth it. I think it's time, because right now people have this mentality that we're just stuck with POSIX compliant shell scripting. That's the default. It will always be the default a decade from now, a century from now, a millennia from now, right? We can never move to a better shell because we've decided we're on this and this is that way. No, I'm not one of those people. I think we can do better. I love Bash. Bash is great. But you know what? At the end of the day, Fish is better. And honestly, when you're scripting with Fish, the syntax is so much easier, especially, the Bash syntax isn't that straightforward. Let's be honest, especially when I'm trying to teach people shell scripting, basic shell scripting. Bash, it's just not as clean as Fish. It just isn't. If you're talking about an interactive shell, of course, Fish just blows everything else out of the water. Bash, ZSH, all of it. Got a couple of super chats here I need to read. I can't read your name. I'm not sure what kind of alphabet that is, but I do appreciate the 360. Is that rubles? Could be. Hi, DT. Thank you for your content. Appreciate you. And thanks for the super chat and the kind words. And there was another one from Swayam Shri. What are your thoughts on the philosophy of Elementary OS? It is the only mainstream distro that doesn't allow the user to change a lot of the stuff that comes installed with it. Yeah, I think there's a place for distributions like that. I think we can have distributions for everybody. I think we can have, something like Arch or Gentoo, where you build everything yourself and it's exactly the way you want it because you made it. But I think there's places for these distributions that are very opinionated, that they have a certain desktop vision that they want to share with the world, and they deliver it. And that's okay too. Yeah. It allows them, it makes their work easier too, the Elementary team, because they're so focused on delivering this Elementary desktop, this Pantheon desktop of theirs. Instead of trying to be all things to all people, having a very narrow focus, I think is a good thing for certain distros. I think it's one of the things that I've always thought was a problem for the Linux Mint team. Because when Linux Mint started, they were really focused on the Mate desktop. Because they were creating the Mate desktop because that was back when GNOME 2 died and GNOME 3, nobody wanted GNOME 3. It was horrible. It was buggy. So Linux Mint, well, we're going to create the Mate desktop. It's just a fork of GNOME 2, maintain it. But then they realized, well, GNOME 3 is kind of the future. GTK 3 is kind of the future. Let's create a GTK 3 desktop as well, the Cinnamon desktop. So now you're trying to maintain your own desktop environments, 2 different desktop environments. And then we're going to maintain an XFCE distribution as well and a KDE Plasma. Back then they had a KDE version for a little while. They had a Fluxbox version of Linux Mint for a while. That was just too much. It's one of those things that I think Linux Mint, I don't know if they would be better served just doing Cinnamon, just doing a Cinnamon distribution. I don't mind them doing the Mate distribution as well. But right now, I think they do Mate, Cinnamon, XFCE. I wouldn't want them to go beyond that. Like, there's no reason to experiment with Plasma or Mate or Budgie or things like that. Because I think you just spread yourself too thin when you have such a small team. And I think that's the good thing about Elementary. They're not spreading themselves so thin by trying to do so many different editions of Elementary. It's just the one Elementary OS. I do apologize. I got behind on some of the chat here. I don't think I missed any super chats. Yeah, Robin, thanks for the explanation. Appreciate that. And Big Pod. In my opinion, POSIX is something we need to forget. I mean, it's all right to have standards, but too many people get hung up on these kinds of standards in Linux and programming and computing, and because you do run the risk of stagnating, not growing, not evolving, not becoming better. Hey DT, Elementary 6 just landed and it rocks. Yeah, I thought about taking a look at Elementary 6. I probably will. I typically take a look at the elementary releases because they don't release that often, right? It's not like you get a new elementary, 4 times a year or anything. Let's see. Hey DT, you're the only Linux user I follow on Library. You're definitely my favorite for years now. Are you going to do a Conky config video? I really don't play too much with Conky. You guys see Conky on my desktop right now. It's mainly, I created that just for people that use my configs. It just made sense to give them some of the basic key bindings. That's mainly why I have the Conky here. The other reason I have it here, I'm showing some system some system information stuff, monitoring, CPU, RAM, date and time. But I don't really need any of this stuff. This is just here to look pretty. Mainly, I wanted key bindings in this Conky for anybody that grabs my Xmonad config. You're looking at Xmonad here today. And I've been working a little bit on Xmobar here recently because the other day I was playing around with the Xmobar documentation, reading something in the documentation. I forget why I was even looking at the documentation for Xmobar, but as I'm scrolling through it, I noticed they had a setting for a box around your widgets in Xmobar, where you can actually have a box border around your widgets. Or you could specify, top border, bottom border, left, right, the width of the lines, the margin, the padding, and things like that. And I thought that was kind of neat. So I played around with it a little bit the other day, and I kind of liked the result. So I kept it, and I've actually pushed my new Xmobar config to my GitLab for those of you that want to check that out. Let's see. Hey DT, do you still use the Emacs window manager? What do you think about it? I use Qtile and awesome. Love your videos. Yeah, I still have it installed. EXWM, the Emacs window manager. The problem is, when I'm using other window managers, it's hard to use. If I have my config set up to use EXWM, then my Emacs config is broken when I log into Qtile and everything else. So I actually removed most of the EXWM stuff from my Emacs config. I can add it back. I've got it saved in a different file somewhere where I can quickly just copy all the EXWM stuff back into my Doom Emacs config and make it work again. Yeah, and somebody just said DT's Comcast seems to work. Yeah, the internet's fine now. And I kind of knew it would be when we got this fixed last night. That's why I scheduled the stream last night. It's like, yeah, I think this is going to be okay. Haven't noticed any buffering. I've been previewing the stream, both in OBS and on YouTube. Everything looks good. DT, you know why Steam will be Arch-based instead of Debian? Well, they did Debian before for the original Steam OS for the Steam machines. Now they're going to move to an Arch base. I'm assuming the reason they're doing that is that probably they learned their lesson basing off of Debian Stable. It's because Debian Stable gets rather old very quickly. The packages within Debian get old. And sometimes, especially for gaming, you're going to need those new video drivers that are out there. And that's just going to be, they could add their own Debian repositories, PPAs, or whatever to get people that stuff. But it just makes sense. Just move to Arch. Yeah, it solves that problem. Let's see. Hey DT, I just finished making the best Windows 10 VM I can with a GPU pass-through and isolating the CPU. It was hard. Thanks for inspiring me to use Arch. Yeah, people have asked me about setting up Windows 10 with GPU pass-through. I don't have a second GPU. It's not something I've played with personally, and he mentions it was hard. I'm sure I could probably set it up if I had the hardware to do that. The other thing is I've never needed to do that, because typically when people are setting up a VM for GPU pass-through, it's almost always for one thing. They want a Windows VM that they can game on. I'm not going to I don't need that. I don't need Windows. But I think it is a cool little project. Something I may play with at some point. I may experiment with some of that GPU pass-through stuff. See if I can set up maybe Windows 11 with GPU pass-through once that thing's around. Hold on a second, guys. I'm going to go ahead and take care of that. Now he's permanently gone. Yeah, we got some trolls today. Probably the same troll over and over again. Let's see, you don't need 2 GPUs for GPU pass-through. Well, yeah, I mean, you could use your onboard graphics for one of them, but I get what you're saying. Let's see, does Zorin Ultimate sacrifice performance? I don't remember Zorin Ultimate. I know it has some extra software installed on it, but it's the desktop environment and all that. It's all the same, right? It's their custom desktop environment or whatever they do. So I would think the performance would be the same. I don't think there'd be any real difference. Are you planning, I'm assuming is what he's asking, are you planning a video about MPD, NC, MCP, CP, CP, PP, and DWM color bar? Have I made videos about MPD or NC, MPC, PP in the past? I might have. DWM I've made videos about. And he specifically talks about color bar, DWM color bar. I'm not sure what you're asking there. If there's an actual program called Color Bar, I've never heard of it. So no, I'm not planning on a video about it. I'll make a note about that and see what you're asking about. Because just offhand, yeah, not sure about that. DWM color bar. Made a note here inside Emacs. Got an org document that I pull up to leave myself notes occasionally. DT, some ordinary gamer already made Windows 11 VM with GPU pass-through. I like that guy. I haven't seen some ordinary gamer. I typically don't watch gaming content, though. You guys know I don't really game. I did play a game of 0 AD, though, the other day when the internet was down here. That was the first game of 0 AD I played in like 2 months, and I lost against the computer. See, DT, are you going to check out Elementary 6? Yes. Yeah. Almost certainly. There's a patch called Color Bar, I guess, for DWM. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I made a note. I'll read about it later and see what it's about, see if it's something that's interesting or not. Offhand, I don't know what it is, though, so I can't give you a yes or a no on that one. To be honest, I feel like the auto-tiling, like PopShell, should be built into any full desktop environment, like Plasma, XFCE, etc. Plasma has some tiling extensions. I think the most common one is Cronkite. Cronkite spelled with a K. It's not bad. I like it a little better than the PopShell one. And we get more trolls. Let's see. As a Comcast customer replying to your stream title, no. Yeah, it's just so frustrating. Because I feel like Comcast, I mean, they fixed the problem the last time I called them, right? And it's like they knew what the problem was the whole time, because as soon as they got here, they knew what the problem was and got it fixed. It's like, why didn't you fix it the other 5 times you've been out? I don't know. It's really poor customer service. Always has been for years. Been a Comcast customer forever at home. And I just hate calling them. Let's see. DT, what are your PC specs? So I've had this machine for about 2 years now. And it's a Threadripper, a 1920, which is the 12-core, 24-thread Threadripper. I've got 64 gigs of RAM. Got a Radeon 7 GPU. Got a 1 terabyte NVMe drive as the main drive in this machine. And then I've got 6 256 gig SSDs also in this machine, and a 6-bay IC dock. I forget what the motherboard is. It's an ASRock. Might be... No, I'd be lying to you if I guessed which ASRock model it is. But it's one of the ASRock motherboards. DT, why do some Linux users get mad when someone says they use Arch Linux? They probably have heard I use Arch, by the way, so many times. You know, it gets a little annoying after a while. I'm not gonna lie. I've been annoyed by it too. I've been put off by some of you Arch fanboys. DT, Debian sucks in Libya. So if I want to use Debian, I have to use Ubuntu Libya repos in Debian. Well, obviously, yeah. The other day when I mentioned, best distros to recommend to people, you do have to take into account location. You have to take into account internet speeds. If you don't have internet, running a rolling release distribution, obviously not an option. You also have to take into account the mirrors. Because I've run distributions here in the US where all the mirrors for the distribution I was trying to run were in Europe or Asia. And it was just really slow. And it's not a great experience. So you do have to, sometimes you do have to take into account exactly where you are in the world and in relation to where those servers are that you're connecting to. DT, would you recommend someone pop instead of Ubuntu when introducing to Linux for the first time? It's the same to me. I mean, personally, I've used both, but I mean, Pop is essentially Ubuntu. Both of them run the GNOME desktop environment. Their GNOME desktop environments look a little different, but it's practically the same. I mean, let's be real. Under the hood, it's the same. Yeah, some of you guys have commented about the EFF shirt. Yep. And someone was asking me about FSF or EFF. I don't know if they were asking about, hey, if you were going to donate some money to one, donate to both. Good organizations, good causes. And somebody was asking about my thoughts on the right to repair. Obviously, you should have the right to repair anything you own. I don't care what it is. Computer equipment, cars, dishwashers, whatever. But, the tide is turning on the right to repair stuff, because now we're starting to see politicians actually take interest and actually passing laws to prevent some of the shady tactics from companies like Apple and John Deere and some of these companies that sell you these really high-priced pieces of equipment. And then they force you not to be able to repair them except by using their high-priced repair services. And it's shady. It really is. Although, to be honest, I would rather... not everybody follows the news. Like I feel like people know enough about Apple as a company to know what they're getting into when they buy an Apple product, but I know that's not the case. I know a lot of people buy an iPhone and have no idea, about what kind of company Apple really is and where their money's going to. So I'll just be quiet on that. Somebody was asking about my cat. How is your cat? He is okay. Of course, they're talking about Mr. Barack Obama, my cat. Let's see. Thoughts on Norway, DT. Thoughts on Norway. I've never been there. I don't know. I don't know what kind of question that is. Thoughts on Norway. Let's see. Gentoo users are too smart for us arch mortals. That's what the Gentoo users would like to make you guys think. Gentoo isn't that bad. If you have installed Arch the Arch way, and you've maintained an Arch distribution for a while, or Arch installation for a few months, Gentoo is very similar, except the compile flags. Building your own software and compiling it. That's really the only difference. It's just adding that on top of what you already know after using something like Arch. And many people, I feel like, they're probably not interested in building their own software and worrying about build flags and things like that. I know I'm not typically. If I'm compiling a piece of software, like if I find something I need to compile myself, I always give it all the flags. just give me everything with it. That way you don't run into a situation down the road where you didn't compile it with a certain flag, and later you need that feature, and then what do? You got to recompile it again. It's one of the things I like about Arch Linux is, all of their packages, their pre-built binaries, for the most part, are built with all the flags. Because in some distributions, that's not the case. Let's see. DT, you don't use a cloud service. What kind of cloud service are you asking about? A cloud is basically, do you use somebody else's servers for something? I do use Amazon S3 storage for backing up my video because I've got rather large storage needs for video. If you're talking about just being able to sync files between devices and things like that, I have my own Nexcloud server. Let's see. Gentoo's awesome, but binary-based distros are far more practical, in my opinion. Yeah. Gentoo's cool for the people that need it, but it's like 99.9% of computer users have absolutely no need for what Gentoo is offering. It's a really kind of specialized kind of thing. Hello from Germany. Have you tried the Archcraft Xmonad flavor? Have I? I feel like I took a look recently at an Xmonad distribution, but I can't remember which one. I would have to do a search on my channel. Of course, you guys can always search on my channel before you ask about videos, because having made over 1,000 videos now, it's very possible that whatever you're asking about, I've probably already covered at some point. Let's see. Yeah, I did an Archcraft video 2 months ago, and I can't remember. I want to say that was it, the one that I logged into Xmonad and took a look around. I think I did 2 or 3 different window managers with them. Yeah, I'm not sure on that. Obviously, I don't have time to watch that video, but if you want to go check it out, because that may be what you were actually looking for there. Let me catch back up on the chat here. Arco has the only good Xmonad config. Yeah, I've taken a look at Arco Xmonad before as well, very briefly. Obviously, I have my own Xmonad config, so typically, I don't look at these things very long. Like when I install Arco, if I happen to install Arco Xmonad on any of my personal machines, which I have, I'm just doing a git clone, getting my own Xmonad configs, and boom, I've got my Xmonad desktop. The only thing I don't like about some of these Xmonad distributions is too many of them are using Polybar rather than Xmobar. And I just think that's... Polybar can work with Xmonad, but Xmobar is, for me, works a lot better. Especially on multi-monitors, because it's very visual as far as... Right now, I've got 3 monitors. The monitor that has focus, which is this desktop we're looking at on a screen right now, is the second desktop, www, because it's the one that's underlined. Now, the 3 that are in purple are what are on my 3 monitors right now. The 6 that are in blue are not being displayed right now. If it was blue with an underline, that means there's something open on that hidden monitor or that hidden workspace. It just gives you a little more information, the kind of stuff that Polybar typically doesn't. There are ways to hack Polybar. You got to do some extreme scripting stuff to make Polybar really give you some of this information. And just Xmobar is just a better bar for Xmonad. Too many people are trying to use Polybar in places that it doesn't make sense. Polybar makes sense with i3, works really well with i3. It's almost like it was designed for i3, right? Same thing with BSPWM. BSPWM and i3 are kind of similar window managers as function. But it doesn't make sense to use Polybar in DWM when DWM has its own bar. Or Awesome, which has its own bar. Or Qtile, which has its own bar. Xmonad doesn't have its own bar, but it kind of does. Xmobar, it's a separate program, but it was written really for Xmonad. And I've seen people put Polybar on all these tiling window managers that have their own bars, and it doesn't make any sense because typically it's a worse experience than the bar that was actually built in. Like why would you ever want to remove Awesome Window Manager's panel for Polybar? It makes no sense. You're not getting anything extra out of it. Same thing with Qtile's panel. DWM maybe, because DWM's panel is very minimalist, right? It doesn't have much to it, but still, if you're worried about having a lot of whiz-bang widgets and a lot of bloat on your panel, DWM wasn't the tiling window manager you should have installed in the first place. Yeah, DT, imagine so many people waiting for Windows 11 for voice assistance. Yeah. Everybody wants to talk to Cortana and Siri and Echo and Hey Google. I actually got my phone here, but don't want to say that too loud. Hey Derek, I know the chat is fairly active, but you didn't say a word to me yet. Mr. Ben Fitzpatrick, how you doing? Let's see. Got aliens. What is your MB breaks? Will you repair it yourself? When your MB, I'm assuming motherboard maybe? I don't know. Will I repair it myself? Possibly. I don't know. It depends. These days I've gotten to the point where a lot of times, and this is for just general repair stuff for anything. Anything around the house, anything, if I can pay somebody else to do it, if it'll save me from having to do it, because sometimes, time is money, right? When I was younger, I remember I used to change my own oil, in the car, things like that, because you save a few bucks. But now I would never want to do that. It's time consuming, it's hot and messy, and it's like, why wouldn't I just take it to a lube shop and let somebody else change my oil? And it's not like I really saved any money, really. At best, maybe I saved, I don't know, $20. Robin, what protein powder do you use, DT? I'm actually not taking any protein powder at the moment. I have used some in the past, though. I actually been out for a while of some of the protein powder, pre-workout kind of stuff. I just kind of got off of all that, but I need to start taking some of that stuff again. As far as pre-workout, though, I found that you drink a couple of cups of coffee before you go to the gym. You'll have plenty of energy. Hey DT, I've asked this in one of your vids, but can you explain a bit about your creative process in making videos? Pre-recording stuff, like maybe writing a script for the video. Yeah, I mean, most of what I do is not really scripted for the most part. Very little is, maybe I have a general outline written of what I'm going to talk about. As far as scripting, like word for word, everything to say in a video, there's very, very few videos I've ever done where I've done that. Because me, I can't read a script. I've never been one of those kinds of people. It doesn't sound natural when I'm reading something to you guys. Usually it's just, I turn on the camera, I start talking. Maybe I have an outline open on one of my monitors where I can kind of make sure I'm following some kind of train of thought. But even that, sometimes I just turn on the camera, start talking, and whatever happens, happens. Because for me, I just think that's more natural for me. DT, do you think Dolphin should enable Sudo or not? Yeah, I mean, every file manager, you should be able to have Sudo privileges with it. Otherwise, it's not really a good file manager. Let's see. DT, is there anything you'll want to change in your Xmonad config? I mean, I've been using Xmonad on and off for at least a decade. So I kind of know what I like with Xmonad these days. So I open my Xmonad config and make minor changes occasionally. Add a key binding or delete a key binding as I maybe changing my terminal emulator from ST to Alacrity. So I need to edit that key binding. But for the most part, as far as how the window manager actually looks and feels, no. I mean, it's always the same key bindings that do the same thing for the most part. Once you have something kind of set the way you like it, there's no need to really worry about it at that point. From that point on, again, it's minor edits. Occasionally, you'll change a key binding. Or sometimes you might change a window rule. The other day, I changed a window rule so I could have mod question mark. That's still working? Yeah. To bring up this window here with my key bindings, you guys saw that little very quick and dirty script where I pulled out all of my Xmonad key bindings and I put them in that little dialog box. I've kept that in my config. I actually pushed that script and my new Xmonad config with that key binding to my GitLab, my .files repository. I may continue to work on that at some point, because again, that was just like a 10 or 15 minute little thing that I did entirely with grep and sed. Maybe at some point I'll actually take the time and make a proper script for pulling out those Xmonad key bindings, and actually format it and make it look good. But the main point of that particular video the other day was, people ask me, how can I do this? How can I do that? And, well, just do it, right? With shell scripting, right? So many times people ask me things that, hey, how can I do this? And man, just open up a terminal and, start playing around with grep, sed, and awk for the most part. And I bet you're going to be able to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. And really, that's, if you know those three shell utilities, grep, sed, and awk, you can do practically anything. DT, have you considered switching to Wayland? I mean, Wayland, I don't use a window manager That's Wayland compatible, so no. Until Xmonad or Qtile or Awesome or DWM, yeah, no. So that would be a negative. That would be a hard no on that. So, isn't it expensive to use S3 for storage? No, not the long-term storage options. It's actually pretty cheap. I have several terabytes of video stored in an S3 bucket, and I want to say the last time they billed me for that is $10-12 or something. It varies. As it depends on, are you actually doing anything with that? As long as it's just sitting on their servers, it's cheap. If people are actually accessing those videos, like if I had it on my website, people are actually watching those videos, which are stored on Amazon servers, then they charge you a little more. Let's see, does anyone know a good time tracking app that tells you how much time you spend on each app for Linux? I do not. I don't know if anybody else in the chat has an answer on that. But yeah, I don't know. How much time you spend on an app, I don't know how. It would be very hard for anybody to track that. It would be very easy to figure out how often you launch certain applications. But as far as how long you were actually in them doing something in them, I mean, I don't know how that would be tracked. That would be a tough one. Let's see. Hey DT, which distros impressed you recently? And which distros you would recommend? I mean, everything I've looked at recently has been pretty good, actually. Haven't done anything real recently, but we looked at the Archcraft video a couple of months that somebody was asking me about earlier, and I thought the new Archcraft was very good. What else did we do recently? Debian Unstable. Debian Unstable, that's a branch of Debian. It's not really a release. I know some people were mad at me. You called it a rolling release. I guess it's not really a release. They don't actually release Debian Unstable as a proper release, but it's a rolling branch of Debian. I don't know why some people are so pedantic. It's like, it's not a release. Whatever. But yes, the internet. Everything is crazy on the internet, the way people act. Let's see. I did Arco Linux Extended. That was good. Arco Linux, of course, I run Arco Linux. You guys know my thoughts on that. Yeah, I didn't look at a recent, like Linux Mint. I did a video on Linux Mint about a month ago, but that was before the new release. Or was it? No, that was the new release, but I didn't focus on highlighting the features of Linux Mint in that video, where I did Linux Mint has 3 flavors, which is right for you. But that was Cinnamon, Mate, and XFCE, and that was the latest release, I think, in that video, but I didn't focus necessarily on the release. It was mainly how do you choose between Cinnamon, Mate, and XFCE if you're new to Linux Mint. We did Gentoo, of course. Gentoo. Would I recommend that? Probably not. I mean, it's cool for some people. Yeah, so I haven't done a lot of first looks as far as distros here in the last 3 months. That was it. I take a look at my virtual machines. Let's see. Because, I mean, I do install stuff that I don't do on camera. Let's see what kind of virtual machines I have installed at the moment. Well, Arco Linux Extended, got 2 of them. Debian Unstable, got 2 of them. One of them with KDE, because I did that for the video the other day. I'm not sure what I did on the other one. Probably GNOME, I don't know. Deepin, that's 20.2. 20.2.2. I don't know if that's the latest Deepin or not. Got Fedora 34. Gentoo, no Xorg, and Gentoo with Xorg and DWM. GNU Geeks, Kubuntu, Manjaro 21.0 XFCE, Mint 20.2, Cinnamon, Mate, and XFCE. Nitrix 1.4.0, NixOS 20.09, Pop! OS 2104, Redcore KDE 2101, Ubuntu 2104, Xubuntu 2104. That's what I've got in Virt Manager. I don't know if I got anything in VirtualBox. I don't think I've installed anything using VirtualBox lately. Yeah, so nothing in VirtualBox. Typically, I install everything in Virt Manager first. If for some reason Virt Manager fails, and because sometimes things don't like Virt Manager, then I'll try VirtualBox. All right, let's catch up on the chat here. I'm really happy about my internet, though. The internet problem has been solved, so now we can start doing the occasional live stream again. So I'm really happy. Now we can do some, fun stuff. Maybe we'll do a gaming live stream or something on occasion. Something I haven't done lately. Maybe we'll all get together and play some Xonotic or something. See, DT, how do you increase storage in Nexcloud? I mean, if it's do you have your own Nexcloud server, or are you using somebody else's? I'm going to need some more information about that. DT, I have finally managed to reply to your message on Patreon. All right, I'll check that out here in a minute. I did notice I got an email that was probably you messaging me on Patreon. Let's see, can you make a video on Linux from scratch? Yeah, maybe one day. I'm just not sure how many people would be that interested in Linux from scratch. It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, Arch Linux and Gentoo. Gentoo is taking kind of what you know with Arch and then slapping all the build flags, learning how to compile your own software and things like that with Gentoo. Linux from scratch kind of takes it to the next level. Think of like a Gen 3 or a Stage 3 Gentoo install. Linux from scratch is like a Stage 0. You start at the very, very basic, You're talking about having to compile, GCC and things like that, and things that take a long, long time. You're talking about so much more to compile, It's the kind of thing typically people will take the Linux from scratch handbook and they'll install it in a VM and spend a couple of weeks, spend a couple hours a day going through it. In a couple of weeks, you'll have Linux from scratch in a VM. It's not a proper distribution, though. That's another thing I think some people that they have it misconstrued that Linux from scratch is some distribution and you're going to run it and you're going to live in it. I mean, you're going to be uber elite because I run Linux from scratch, by the way. No, Linux from scratch doesn't have a package manager, right? It's not meant to be a Linux distribution you actually live in. It is an educational tool. Linux from scratch is actually a handbook. That's what Linux from scratch is. It's a handbook for you to study to learn how to build Linux from the ground up. Let's see. Hey DT, how do you deal with the elitist? You give sane recommendations and have sane opinions, in my opinion, but many disagree. People are free to disagree. I don't take it personally, right? If people disagree with your thoughts about Linux and anything, it's a free country. They're free to have their opinions. You're free to have yours. Don't let it bother you. It's just opinions. And if they get angry about your opinions, then that's their problem for taking things way too seriously. Let's see. Rosemary said, I have my own Nexcloud, and I'm not sure how to increase the storage. I am new at this own cloud thing. So you're not sure how to increase the storage. Yeah, I am not sure what you're asking there. Obviously, your storage is going to be limited to whatever disk space you have. Are you asking about like your web host? Maybe you need to get a bigger drive to increase the storage? Of course, that'll depend on what web host you use. All of them typically will have a upgrade path for that. For example, if you ordered a hosting package where you only needed 128 gig drive, and then later you filled up that drive and needed more storage, you can have them give you a bigger drive in that server for some extra money, of course. You just upgrade your plan with them. But this isn't something that's, unless I'm misreading this, I don't think this has anything to do with Nexcloud itself, right? This is just, how do I get a bigger drive, I guess, with my web host is really kind of what you're asking. Let's see. Any plans on making DTOS? Yes, it's the first thing I want to do when I finally get a home computer. I've been without a home computer for 3 months. I can't do any kind of big projects like that, especially projects where I know I'm going to be bombarded with all kinds of support requests initially when it launches. I can't not have a home computer for that because I'm only in this office a few hours a day, right? And that's usually to make these videos, not to be somebody's support channel. So it would be ridiculous for me to even think about that while not having a home computer. When I get a home computer, that's the first thing I plan on taking care of. Because I got some ideas on that. I think we could make that rather easily, and I think it would be all right. I think what I'm going to do is it's just going to be my xmonad. My xmonad config, my xmobar config. We'll have it also compile Doom Emacs, and it'll be basically a desktop environment built around xmonad and Emacs, and I think that'll be cool. There's the E shell, my random color scripts that actually runs in the E shell. That's actually one of the things I didn't initially know, is that the E shell inside Emacs has its own like RC file, like your bash RC or your ZSHRC or your bash profile. E shell has those kinds of config files too, or you can create them, and that's how I got the startup shell scripts, that the colorful shell scripts. People have been asking me about that because I've gotten some new subscribers, and I don't mention this all the time because I just assume everybody's been watching from the beginning. But these things in my terminals, these color scripts, every time I open up, I get a random shell color script. Guys, that is actually on my GitLab. Look for the shell color scripts repository on my GitLab. If you're on Arch Linux, though, you could just install shell color scripts from the AUR. So if I did, well, let me zoom in. So either with yay or paru, do a -S and then do shell. I want to say it's -color. Yeah, -color -scripts. I couldn't remember if I added the -git on the end of the name, but I didn't. Shell -color -scripts. I can go ahead and reinstall it. Won't hurt anything. Be good to see if it actually builds correctly. I haven't changed this in a while, though I don't think I've pushed anything to that particular repository in a while. So yeah, it installed just fine. Close that, open a terminal, yeah. And what this is I just add the command color script random to the last line of my bash RC and my ZSHRC and my fish RC. That way, it doesn't matter what shell I'm using, I always get a random color script, because you run the command color script random to get a random color script. Or you could do color script the name of a specific script, for example, ghost. Well, I didn't like that. I should have gave it a flag. I don't remember what flags to give it. Let's see. If I do -H to get the flag, -L for list. So let's do that. Color script -L lists out all the names. And then let's go help again. -E for execute. So color script -E ghosts. And there we go. That's how that works. Nothing complicated to, it's not some kind of, scripting genius that makes all that happen. Most of that is just ASCII art, pictures. Some of those things have been around for decades. People often post them in Unix porn screenshots. I just collected a whole bunch of them. And then, getting one at random is, like a 5-minute bash script. Let's see. Can you do a video covering the different init systems? I'm not sure how interesting that would be for most people. For desktop Linux users, which is mainly what I am and what I'm presenting to you guys as desktop Linux, it doesn't matter. The init system doesn't matter at all. Nobody's going to play with the init system typically, you desktop Linux users. I barely do anything with systemd on my system as far as, setting up services, starting or disabling services, or, doing anything like that. That's not typically what most people are going to do. Most people have no idea what init system is running on their computer. Most Linux desktop users, anyway. As far as the differences in them, that's another thing. They all do the same thing. I mean, an init system is an init system. It's setting up start jobs, right? And setting up these services that auto start when you start your computer. It's really no difference. All right, it doesn't matter if you're using systemd or OpenRC or Runit or GNU Shepherd or whatever, Upstart, whatever init system. They all accomplish the same thing. Well, yeah, it would just be a horrible video. I'm not a horrible video, but I don't think you'd be the only one interested in that, whoever asked that question. I wouldn't be interested in that video. I promise you, if I'm going through YouTube and it recommends me the difference in Linux init systems, I probably wouldn't click on that one. It wouldn't be one that I'd want to watch. Let's see. Currently using OpenRC on Artix. While I was installing, I noticed that Artix now has Suite 66. I know it's just S6, but I am quite curious. Yeah, I have no thoughts on that. I guess that, like I said, a init system for the most part is just an init system, and for most people, they're never going to do anything with their init system. They're never even going to know there's an init system on their computer or what it is. I mean, I know what they are, and even I don't play with, again, systemd too much. I know how to enable and disable services, restart services, check on the status of a service. That's about it. And you can do all of that with any init system. OpenRC has the same commands. Upstart, the old Upstart init system had the same kind of commands. sysv init. Hi, can you explain in a short or full video how you set up your displays using Xrender? Well, I will give you a secret here with my 3 displays here. I don't actually do anything with Xrender with them. Typically, I plug them in my graphics card, and whatever order they end up being, if they're not 1, 2, 3 like they should be, I'll unplug the cables, plug it back in to get them in the right order. But beyond that, I never use Xrender on physical machines. Almost never. When you guys see me playing with Xrender all the time in VMs, that's VMs on physical hardware. Yeah, I don't play with. If you really needed to play with the order of the monitors or the layout, change from vertical to horizontal, etc., I would use a graphical tool for that. I would use ARander. It's probably a little easier than using Xrender at the command line. Let's see if I have ARander installed. No, it doesn't look like I do. I guess I could install it to show you what ARander is. So I'm going to do a sudo pacman -S ARander here. And now, this is ARander. It's a graphical front end to Xrender. And it's showing you my 3 monitors. It's showing me the primary monitor, and then it's the order that they're in. If you wanted to, you could drag these boxes around and move them in a different order. And then what you would do is you would save the layout. And it saves this config file. And then what you do with that config file is you just make sure when you start X or you start your window manager that you execute that saved config file. Really easy. Hey, DT, make a Ardour video. People have asked me about Ardour. I don't know much about Ardour. I know how to do basic audio editing with it. But Ardour is such a massive program that does a ton of stuff. It's mainly, especially for people that are really serious into creating music. You know, I'm not the person to actually do an Ardour video, like a real Ardour video. I could show you how to do some really, really basic stuff on it. For just standard basic audio editing, like you're editing audio for a podcast, right? That's the great thing about a tool like Audacity. That's where it really shines because it just excels for that kind of use. It doesn't have all this extra stuff that you don't need, right? It's really for, hey, I'm recording into a microphone and then I can edit what I've spoke into that microphone right there, or I can take another recording, put it into Audacity and clean up the audio, noise reduction and compression, normalization, things like that. Where Ardour has so much more going on with it. Honestly, what people see me recommending Ardour in the show notes is because I had Audacity in my show notes, telling you guys go check out Audacity. I can't recommend Audacity right now, but I'm going to start recommending one of the Audacity forks eventually, because that's what everybody's eventually going to move to. I mean, Ardour's still going to be around, but Ardour, I mean, for just normal people, Ardour has such a steep learning curve. You can't ask normal people to use Ardour, right? You can't ask the normies. They can't do it. Let's see, how did you get autocomplete without pressing tab in Pac-Man? The magic of fish. Fish is psychic. Let me type something. I'm just going to hit S on the keyboard because it's going to recommend the last thing that started with S that I did, which was sudo pacman-s Ardour. If I just hit the right arrow key, right, I've already completed that. So, of course, since that was the last command, I could also just do an up arrow. But if it was some command that I ran ages ago, I don't know, what was the last command I ran with A? Amphora-distro.tube. And I could, it just... Fish as an interactive shell is really quite amazing. DT, do a charity stream where you switch to Windows 10 for a week. I was with you doing a charity stream, and then you said switching to Windows 10 for a week. Yeah, it's proprietary poo. All right, guys, we're coming up on an hour and a half, and that's about the length that I wanted to go for this. So probably kill the stream here in about 5 minutes. You got any questions or comments, anything you want to get in? Make sure you ask them now. So it's forever recorded in the annals of history, or at least YouTube history. But I have been pleasantly surprised. I'm not surprised. I knew this was going to be okay. I'm really happy, though, that the internet situation has been solved here. So this was really smooth sailing today. So I think we can start live streaming again. Hey DT, what is your experience with various BSDs? Have you ever used one as your main OS? No, I have not. I played around with the BSDs, installed them occasionally on test machines and on in VMs, obviously. Using them, like would I install any of them on my main production machine? No, I got to do all of this stuff. And the BSD operating systems, I'm going to be missing stuff that I need, right? The BSD operating systems are still mainly server operating systems. I know people run BSD on their laptops and things like that, but unless you're doing all of the audio video stuff I'm doing, I don't want to hear about, you running OpenBSD on your ThinkPad that all you ever do is open Firefox and browse Facebook. Yeah, I know you can do that, but I've got some other requirements that I need. A proper desktop operating system, like Arco Linux. I did install GhostBSD one time on my main production machine. That did not go well, but that was about 3 years ago. But I never had a working microphone in the 4 days that I had that installed, and which caused me to hop again. So I never made a video about me trying GhostBSD on my main production machine because I couldn't. How could I record the audio if I didn't have a working microphone? Is Comcast sort of software? Comcast is an internet service provider, cable provider here in the U.S. It's a huge company that many of us are forced to use because there's no real competition, and they're high priced, and their customer service is legendary for just sucking really, really bad. I know I probably could have titled the stream something other than "Did Comcast fix my internet?" I'm sure people outside the U.S., who the hell is Comcast? For those in the U.S., they know exactly my pain, though. All right. You guys got any other questions before we shut it down? A couple more minutes. Yeah, thanks for the answer. No problem. Starlink looks cool. Yeah, I keep hearing a lot about Starlink. We'll see. I've got some family members that may give Starlink a try. Family members that live out in the sticks and, Manjaro is fine, beginner-friendly, stable. Yeah, I would agree. Manjaro, yay or nay? Yeah, go with it. Try it out. See if it works for you. For some reason it doesn't. Again, there's other things to try out. It's not like you install one of these Linux distributions and it's the only one, right? You install one and it's not working for me. Install another one, Find something that works for you. ADT, you have a USB for your energy? No, I don't. Let's see. DT, Fish is not POSIX compliant. Yes, I'm aware that it's not POSIX compliant. That's why I like it. That's a plus. That's not a minus. Let's see. I would take them over my only option of satellite, MiFi, or dial-up. Are you talking about Comcast or are you talking about Starlink? Because obviously, if you're talking about Comcast, I'm in the same boat. I've got to take it. There's really no... I don't have really any other option that would work. Let's see. DT, please read it before you're leaving. Okay, let's see. With only one GPU, you can do a GPU single pass-through with scripts. Keep in mind, you can't use the host while on the VM. Yeah, of course not, because how are you going to use the GPU on the host machine when you... Right, that's why you need 2 GPUs. Again, I get what you're saying. I got what you were saying before. Really, you need 2 GPUs. Get 2 GPUs if you're going to do that. If you're going to do it right. Let's see. With all the recording gear you have, do you make music? Occasionally. Occasionally I play music into these microphones, yes. Let's see. No, DT, you didn't read my message. Well, let me scroll back up. Hi DT, I just want to say thanks for Doom Emacs for Noobs video. I just got into Doom Emacs after using GNU Emacs for a week, and it really helped. There you go. Read your message. I appreciate the kind words. Now, I hope I helped you guys out with the Doom Emacs for Noob videos, because I know how it was when I first switched to Emacs. There's a learning curve, right? It takes a minute to learn some of this stuff. Yeah, DT doesn't phone. I have a phone, but yeah, I don't. I honestly, these days, I don't need a phone. The only reason I had a phone before is because I had a real job. Now that I don't, I actually could go back to not having a phone. All right, guys. Well, we're going to shut it down for the day. So I do want to thank all of you guys hanging out in the YouTube chat. You guys, all of you guys that gave some cool questions and comments. And still got more than 200 of you guys hanging out here. I also want to thank the patrons, of course. Let me thank these guys. These names you're seeing on the screen here. I want to thank each and every one of these ladies and gentlemen as well. And that's all I got, guys. So, internet is working. Hopefully, you'll see more live streams now. Instead of one live stream like every 3 months. Hopefully, I can at least do 1 or 2 of these a month now that I actually have working internet. All right, guys. Peace.